Hey guys, this is my first course with each of you. And in this one, I don't want to disappoint you. I want to give you something really good. In like 20, 30 minutes, I want to finish an entire course on college admissions, what you should be thinking about, what you should not be thinking about, and in more details. We'll go into that, okay? So, I've been a college admissions counselor for about 7 years now. I started with training my daughters when they were going to go to high school or to college, and I did reasonably well with that. And but where I felt really the system got me was I couldn't find a good counselor for my kids. I mean, I found some good ones, but they just didn't stand up. They didn't stack up to my own expectations. I have an engineering background. I expect linear progression with every meeting. I want to know with every meeting if I'm doing well or not, what areas I need to improve on. I need to be told where I need to go. And that's what I was expecting, but it didn't happen. And it's not the fault of the counselor, it's just people who come from a background in academia just have a hard time explaining such projects. I think of college admissions as purely an engineering project, which is a large building that has to be built and with a lot of moving parts and a lot of attention needed to the details. And you need somebody who has that focus and attention, can see the big picture and then start working at the smaller components and really give attention to the ups and downs and the nitty gritties around that. So we'll talk more about that today. Okay. So here's a quick agenda of what we'll be covering. We'll talk about my unique value proposition, what makes me good at what I do. We'll talk about what it takes to build together a good application strategy, what you should think about the four different pillars of your application, or sometimes more like the six pillars of your application. We'll talk about the different types of colleges, like colleges versus universities versus state universities versus private universities. We'll go into different components to discuss that. How do you put together then a college list? The reach, super reach, safety, target, schools. We'll talk about what the process should be, what should be a submission plan around that. And then we'll go into the much elusive brainstorming process about what are your values, what you think you should talk about, and how do you portray those in your essays, what are some of the strategies, what you should not be doing, and what you could do. And then finally, how do you pay for college? How do you go about getting scholarships and merit scholarships? And how do you know which schools are not going to let you graduate in 3 years? That becomes important. Okay. So with that, let's get going. As I said, my background is very unique. I have an engineering background, an immigrant. I'm always very hungry to overachieve and to get the best deal. And because of my engineering roots, I'm always thinking about breaking large problems into smaller, bite sized chunks. So that kind of, in some ways, fuels the philosophy of Success Coach, which is how do you reach for the stars? How do you break the glass ceiling? Still taking incremental small steps on a daily basis. We'll talk you through the different roller coasters of college admissions and then what is a good student profile, okay, for a particular college. I have a bachelor's in computer engineering from Bombay, India. I'm also a certified counselor from Stanford and University of University of California in San Diego. And I've been working with different nonprofits. I've probably graduated close to 100 students now across Science Gurus, where I do a lot of free pro bono teaching of college admissions processes. I also teach a class in entrepreneurship at Science Gurus, so be sure to join my class if you want sometime. In the summer, I run that course, and sometimes even in the winter. It's a 6 week long class. But that's my background: engineering, educator, entrepreneur. I struggle with ups and downs like all of you. I just struggle with different types of ups and downs, not with college admissions, because that's an area I know cold. So one thing you'll go through a lot in the process is ups and downs. Lots of feeling anxiety, not knowing if you're doing well or doing well, and the process is hard. But I tell you, it's all doable. It's not rocket science. As long as you keep making forward progress on a daily basis, as long as you're not trying to hit a home run every day, and you're making small incremental changes towards maybe researching a particular college a day, or writing about some topic that you thought about that could be worth telling somebody about, or if you worked on making some more changes to your resume, or if you wrote a brag sheet, you wrote something important which a recommender could perhaps surface in their application, or you just looked up some particular professors at colleges that you're looking at. Everything, each one of them is a milestone. Okay. There are over 4,000 colleges in the America. Half of them won't even make a full classroom each year. And most of these schools are damn good in some way or the other. But most of you actually know only of less than 5 or 10 schools. It's because the schools market themselves really well. But there are schools which are very, very good that do not spend that kind of money on marketing budgets. Those are the schools you want to think about. Okay? Not every school is made for you, and you're not made for every school. It's about a fit, finding the perfect fit, and that's an area I really excel in. Understanding your personality, your fit. That's what every counselor worth his salt should be able to do. Should know at least all the schools around in the neighborhood, in the country, and should be able to talk at some level of detail with confidence on those schools, knowing your personality as a student. And that's what I do. I try to find that best fit with we'll start with 70, 80 schools that I'll figure out based on your personality. And then we start peeling the onion. We start reducing that list. Our goal is to come down to about 25, 26 schools that we will apply to. And out of those, hoping out of the 25, all 25 will make us an offer, and then you accept one of them. Okay? These are your unique milestones that you will go through in senior year with me. And start with putting together your experiences. I start from June and it goes all the way to November. By November, I'm pretty much done with everything, all the essays and all the work. After that, it's just looking for your acceptance letters to come in. But we start with knowing your experiences, things that matter to you, things that you think colleges should know about, things that I should know about as a counselor. And these are those 5 dimensions: drive, initiative, diversity of experience, contributions, and your intellectual curiosity. So as long as you can talk about those 5 and you can tell me about when you took an initiative, how did you show your hunger to learn, to going against the odds, or if there's some diversity in what you've done, if there's some personality that you want to showcase carefully and meticulously, how did you contribute to charitable causes or to a classroom? How did you mentor students? How are you just a team player, or intellectual curiosity? What triggered something in the class for you, or a particular experience that led to something bigger? Remember, I'm looking for what's called as the situational analysis, the STAR, the situation, the task, the action, the results, followed by the learnings. It's called the STAR L format, which I've coined myself, the L part. But situationally, what was the situation? What was the task at hand? How big was the situation, or what was the gravity of the situation that you had to work towards, the action you took, and the results that came out, tangible results that came out. Actions meaning what you took or what you inspired in others, and most important is the learning, what came out of the whole process. So remember, as long as you can remember these 5 parts of the equation, you can talk to any experience that matters to you. Could be you meeting somebody you love, could be an experience with a teacher, could be maybe you got lost somewhere, or a drive you took somewhere on your own, or a case of bullying, or a case of helping somebody, or about a new sport you learned, or a new activity that you worked on yourself, maybe a vice you got over. There are so many ways to come up with an experience. We'll talk about that. But then we go into spiking your activities. There's one thing is to write about your activities, what you do, but really how do those activities differentiate you is more important. What did you do? What did you learn in those activities is something which is very important to talk about. Then we move into the UCs, the application, the PIQs, or what those means to you. Then we go into the Common App essays. Um, we work through the Common App. Then we do the recommendations. That's pretty much the whole process. And then we get into supplemental essays. So by the time we get to supplementals, you've already written your personal essay, you've written the UC application, you've done your activities, you've done your brag sheet. So you're pretty much ripe. You're ready to do supplementals. So pretty much we're meeting you once a week and making incremental progress every day, every week. You're making a progress every day. I'm making a progress. I'm taking tally of that every week. Pretty much all the work is between you and me one-on-one. In the junior year, things are a little more nuanced. More of the work is around the summer planning. We do a lot of academic planning for you, SAT, ACT planning. We start making you write some essays as well, putting together a resume, looking at the green spots or green field areas where you've not done anything, telling you about colleges versus universities, humanities, STEM programs, community colleges, state schools. We work through all those details with you and put together a list of target colleges that you can see in the summer or in the springtime. Okay. We start putting together some experiences for you as well, but most importantly, we start doing the recommendations. People you need to call out and reach out to get your the people who will be signing your brag sheet or who will be writing recommendations for you. And 9th and 10th graders go even before that, mostly summer planning, academics, a little bit about colleges. So you can see across the board, we make you do a little bit of experiences writing in the 9th and 10th, but really the bulk of the work starts here in junior year where the heavy lifting happens. And then senior year is crazy, really the crazy time when I work with you. So that's pretty much the unique intellectual property that I bring to the table. My engineering background, my linear way of thinking, entrepreneurial hustler style of thinking, planning, but really believing in my students because that's the key of what I do. So let's talk about your application strategy. How do you go about? They are just, most important in your application strategy is you got to start early. And early could be sophomore year, could be junior year, sometimes even senior year. But really start early working with a counselor, somebody like me, to meet them often, to know what are the blind spot areas you're still not working on. Knowing your competition, knowing your X factor, knowing how you differentiate from your competition is super critical. The different dimensions of your application, we'll talk about it. Do you need to take SAT or ACT? Is it really optional or not? We'll talk about that. And then putting a strategy for submissions. The strategy is as important as your grades or your extracurriculars, so don't miss out on that. So really focusing on starting early, which is starts with research, not only your extracurriculars, not only your academics, but researching colleges, deadlines, putting together a network with the professors, knowing them, really important. Knowing how you differentiate from others as you come competitively. The people you're competing with. Chances are they're right in your class. And how do you differentiate, put together an X factor is critical. Focus. The 6 areas of application could be academics, could be external testing, could be extracurriculars, demonstrated interest. There are 6 areas we'll talk about each of them. But really knowing your timelines every year, what you have to get to, which inches you towards admissions is super critical. This is your stereotypical competition, somebody you're competing with, and somebody who has impressive grades, kind of okay extracurricular activities, stories which are nothing earth-shattering about this person, minimal, recommendations, has decent recommendations, but not shows much toward demonstrated interest towards a particular school. They might love to go to a school, but in terms of demonstrating their interest for that school, what that school does, who are the professors there, who are some of the alumni or the students, they've not done all that stuff. And really, in most ways, knowing your enemy and knowing yourself, if you know your enemy and who you are, you're always going to win. That's what Sun Tzu, the master of war, says, and I really believe in that. You have these 6 dimensions across your application, starting from GPA or SAT, which is really getting the advanced placements, getting good IB scores. Um, that matters more than anything else. SAT is not really optional. I mean, if you have a low score, it's okay. It's not to send it, but SAT is not really optional. It's one more chance to for you to show to schools that you have the academic prowess, because ultimately they are looking for people who can finish the school and finish in 4 years and be successful. And school is not easy. Engineering or university in general is hard. So the more you take courses, harder courses early on, you're telling the schools that you are worthy or you will succeed at college, and of course by default by virtue of that at life later. So look at these six fulcrum areas or these six areas very critically. Your recommendations, extracurriculars, everything matters, and but they don't matter as much as your academics and or your SAT, ACT. Those two combined close to 65-70% of your application. So make sure you pay a lot of attention to that. Not just that, but what particular APs you take. Don't try to game the system. You need to take specifically structured APs, which will take you towards your goal. SAT versus ACT. I mean, some students in the East Coast like to take ACT. West Coast students like SAT. There are schools which will only take SAT. They don't take ACT. Okay, so very few, like Georgetown, will ask for that, but most schools will prefer you have taken SAT. I mean, even though they say it's optional and they'll look at a different pile, make sure you've done it. And this is just a explanation of SAT versus ACT. What subject you need to be good at to know which particular might be to your style. But the most important thing is try both, see which one works for you. Next is your recommendation letters. It's very important to have a way to influence your recommenders, because at the end of the day, the recommendation is pretty much the only piece of third party testimonial that a college is getting about you. So make sure you influence them well. You tell them what you want them to write about you. Remind them of stories. Meet them often. I tell my students that by 11th grade, you should know who your recommenders are going to be. So they better be somebody from 9th or definitely 10th or 11th graders. Try to stay away from 9th grade teachers. It's too early for them to really put something, or they might not remember much about you. Okay, so look for 10th and 11th grader teachers and target them from the very beginning, saying these are the teachers that I'm going to ask for recommendations from, and document things that they've done for you. Send out thank you notes to them. So at the end of the day, you can actually send them. You have an easy way of putting it all together, saying what they did well for you. Okay. Demonstrating interest is not about just going on the email list of the school. Demonstrating interest is about two different fulcrums. One is knowing good things about the school, what it's good at, what it's not good at, and actually reaching out to the school, showing them your interest. And it's also about knowing the professors. So emailing professors, getting on their online courses, find ways to not just say hello to them, but actually be of meaningful interest to them. So becoming part of being a TA for a professor in college, for helping them with a school program or one of their online courses could be one way of connecting with them. Interview alumni, go to the campus, look at their graduation speeches. You learn a lot about that school from those, and reach out to some of those alumni and make friends with them. Goes a long way. Demonstrated interest can be on the level of talking about the school, but also more importantly on the career, the career you've decided to take. And these are some of the APs or the courses you want to take. College level courses could be through APs, could be through honors classes, could be through dual enrollments, but make sure you've taken care of all of these to show your career interest towards pre-med or business, engineering. But it's pretty clear if you're going to go towards med school and you don't have enough physics, chem, and bio or maths to showcase, that will be taken against you, and you better have good scores on those things. Same thing for engineering, same thing for business, okay, or for the Ivy League schools. So pay proper attention to this list of APs and try to make sure you stick to bringing these upfront versus arbitrary random APs just that you take to bump up your GPA because outcomes can see through it very, very quickly. So that takes care of the strategy component. Hopefully that was helpful. And in the next section, we'll talk about colleges um, and how you can research different colleges. What are the different types of colleges? We'll talk next.